And welcome back to the Hot Lap, where we are talking Sergio Perez. We are talking the problem with Perez. Yes, the current Red Bull number 2 driver to a certain Max Verstappen, 3 times champion. You may well know him. But before we get into all that, Sergio Perez, let's talk about his early career, because he may not be as bad as you think. So he was born 1990, 26th of January, as Sergio, I think Michael Checo Perez Mendoza. You may know him as Checo Perez, or Sergio Perez. And, well, his early life is karting. I mean, that's where we're most interested. He began at the age of 6 in 1996, which wasn't too bad at all. But prior to karting, as I mentioned, his overall F1 stats aren't really as bad as you think. Okay, he's not won a championship. He's had 252 starts. He's won 6 races so far, up until Qatar. He's had 34 podiums, 3 poles, and 11 fastest laps. And that's stats that, for example, John Alesi, Fisichella, Trulli haven't had. He's won more wins than Heinz Harald Frentzen as well. So I don't think he's as bad as many people say he is. It's just that compared to certain drivers, he looks really bad. So, does that mean Sergio Perez is not a world-class driver? He certainly, you can make a very good argument, I think, now. He's not championship material. But does he deserve his place in Formula 1? I think he does. Does he deserve his place in Red Bull? Maybe not. But he started, as I said, he started off in karting at the age of 6 years old. He achieved 4 victories in his junior category and claimed the runner-up spot. Claiming the runner-up spot. In 97, he started karting in the youth class, where he was the youngest driver, earning a win in 5 podium finishes and finished 4th in the championship. But he did eventually, in 2009, join the GP2, as in Formula 2. It was called GP2 back then. And he raced for the Campos Grand Prix team in the 08-09 GP2 series, partnering a certain Vitaly Petrov. Yes, the same Vitaly Petrov that Fernando Alonso is not a massive fan of, because that stopped him from winning that 2010 championship, if you ask Fernando. He was also the first Mexican driver to compete at this level of motorsports since Giovanni Alloy. I think I've got that name wrong, but he took part in Formula 3000, I think, nearly 2 decades, 1990, prior to Sergio Perez. And he won his first GP2 Asia Series race at Sakir, winning a lights to flag victory. He moved, though, eventually to 2009 to the GP2 series that we pretty much know today as F2, alongside one of his Formula 3 friends. But he finished 12th in his first year in the standings, with the best result coming at the Valencia. Do you remember that track? In the off-season, though, he contested, obviously, again for the GP2 series. Now, in 2010, he won 5 races and finished 2nd behind series leader Pastor Maldonado. There's good old Pastor Maldonado. You can see good old Checo Perez in the middle. And his Formula 2 stats aren't really too, they're not too bad. They're not world leading. They're not like a Lewis Hamilton-esque, or maybe, a certain Ferrari driver-esque. Nico Rosberg as well. But he didn't win it, but they're not really too bad. They're not too shabby to look at as we've gone. I mean, he won races, he qualified there, and he wasn't too far out of a championship against, obviously, Maldonado. I guess it's how much you want to rate Pastor Maldonado to really compare to how good you think good old Checo Perez is. But not too bad at all. Is old Checo Perez. So there's obviously his wonderful Formula 2 team, GP2 team, sorry, but there we go. 2011 was a big year. He signed for Sauber. And that was on the 4th of October. It was announced that he'd be replacing a certain Nick Heidfeld, which is quite interesting. So he finished 7th in his first race at the Australian Grand Prix, and he impressed pretty much everyone by stopping to change tyres only once. So Sergio Perez, prior to coming up to Red Bull, was very much known as the tyre whisperer. And he did really, really well. But a lot of people are saying his standout year, and I completely agree with this, his standout year is 2012, I think. Was the year that he became almost a legend by nearly beating Fernando Alonso in a Ferrari, and this was at Malaysia. I mean, when I say nearly, if we tossed the coin, I think he could have won. It was so close, in fact, that many people suggested that Ferrari made a certain phone call to the Sauber team that run Ferrari engines and were like, Fernando is faster than you, which potentially could have given a certain Felipe Massa PTSD. But he did. I mean, he came really, really close. I mean, his stats in 2012, he championship position 10th. Okay, started all the races. Obviously, no wins. No poles. Did get a few podiums. Fastest lap. His best result, as we know, was second in Malaysia. His best qualifying was fourth. So not a snub to look at. Okay, not a rookie year, but in his second year, he showed, I think, everyone how solid he could be. And he was also a member, up until 2012, of the Ferrari Academy. So what happened after that year? Well, he didn't join Ferrari, interestingly. He ended up joining, I think, as many may call it, Ferrari's nemesis, McLaren. So what happened in 2012? Lewis Hamilton went, see you later, after potentially being in the hunt for the World Championship in 2012 against Sebastian Vettel, but the McLaren car, albeit you can make an argument it was at times faster than the Red Bull, it was very unreliable, and he went out of the lead several times. For example, Singapore is the one that everyone remembers. That's the one that everyone said a certain Austrian driver with the last name of Lauda called Lewis Hamilton up, and that's where the deal was done. So McLaren felt they needed a superstar driver in the guise of Sergio Perez, hoping he will be the next Lewis Hamilton. And this is where the first pothole in the road of Sergio Perez's F1 career, I think, was. He was going up against Jenson Button, who is really, really solid. And, I mean, Button, a lot of people like to say he scored more points than Lewis Hamilton during their career together. He beat Hamilton in 2011. That was arguably Button's best season. You could even make an argument it was better than his championship winning season, considering he was up against Lewis Hamilton. So how did Checo do in 2013? Well, there's Jenson Button's stats. He finished 9th in the championship. He started all the races. Unfortunately, McLaren didn't get any wins. He got no poles or podiums, no fastest lap. His best result was 4th. Qualified 6th at Button, DNF 1.73, and he finished, obviously, Button finishing 9th in that championship. Now, when we compare it to Sergio Perez, he finished 11th, started all the races. Again, no poles, no podiums, no wins. One fastest lap. Best result was 5th, not as good as Button's, okay. Best qualifying 7th, one down from Button again, two DNFs, and, didn't, 49 points, didn't really outscore him, did he either? And that was the big stumbling block, because I think McLaren really, really expected Sergio Perez to win against Jenson Button. I don't think too many over here did. I think we figured it may well potentially be a close fight, but it wasn't even that close a fight. They did almost come together a couple of times. And a lot of people have suggested, why did Perez leave McLaren at the end of 2013? There'd been suggestions, now take this with a massive grain of salt, that McLaren were unhappy with Perez's attitude and work rate. Their long-standing staff member, now unfortunately passed away, Joe Ramirez, who's Mexican, like Perez, and he was instrumental to bringing him to the team. And apparently he was quite happy to slag him off to the media, saying he wasn't taking his job and a unique opportunity for his career seriously enough. So Perez ended up going back kind of to like a going back to a midfield team after leaving McLaren. I think he was really, really cross and upset when that came out. It'd be interesting to see when we speak to Perez whether he really expected it and how much of a surprise it was. If we ever speak to Perez, I doubt we ever will, but that's certainly one question I've really wanted. But that's obviously he ended up going to Red Bull in the end. But prior to going to Red Bull in 2020, he ended up joining Racing Point. But before Racing Point, it was Force India, which is now known as the Aston Martin team. So, and this is where things got interesting. He was really, really solid, and he did end up getting his first victory. It took him a while from 2014 to 2020. I mean, he had Esteban Ocon, for example, as a teammate. And in the end, I'm trying to think now, 2018, it was Force India, and they were in trouble financially. And the Lance Stroll's father, Lawrence Stroll, ended up buying the team and essentially saving it. So a big props there. Massive props to Mr. Stroll saving the team, allowing obviously Checo Perez to stay, and Esteban Ocon ended up going because a certain Lance Stroll, yes, that guy, ended up coming into the wonderful pink team, which is we'll get into that last shot later, which I thought was interesting. And what happened then was it was going really well. 2020 came along, and it was announced that there was a big deal with Aston Martin, and a certain Sebastian Vettel was going to join them in essentially 2021. And the big thing is everyone was like, well, naturally, you'd get rid of Lance Stroll. Yeah, you would. Let's be honest. In terms of talent, you absolutely would. But unfortunately, the man that helped, save the Racing Point / Force India / Aston Martin team was left on tenterhooks. But as you've seen, he ended up signing with Red Bull for 2021, which was good. But before that, he won in the Sakir Grand Prix, which was the outer circuit. That's the race that George Russell arguably could have won. But the interesting thing about Sergio Perez, yes, many of his victories you can make an argument were inherited. However, he did have a whoops-a-daisy from the first lap and went all the way to the back and then still won it. So I don't think you can take too much away. It was a really, really good victory. And he was still at this point at least, known as the tyre whisperer. So he goes to Red Bull. He does obviously, the victory really, really helping him, and he does really, really well. And in 2021, you can make an argument that in Abu Dhabi, he really helped Max Verstappen get that World Championship. If it wasn't for him costing Lewis Hamilton so much time. Now, yes, everyone called him the Minister of Defence. However, you had obviously Lewis Hamilton here against two Red Bulls because Valtteri Bottas had pretty much checked out that season, at this point in the season. And any damage of a front wing, any damage, Hamilton's title was completely over. So he was a bit cautious. He was, I don't want to say overcautious, but he was very cautious passing Perez. But that's not to demean Perez's job. He did a fantastic job. And the way Abu Dhabi ended, yes, had it ended properly, Hamilton would have been champion. Facts. Unfortunately, both we can make arguments that both deserved it. But the way it ended, the really good job that Perez did was holding Hamilton up so much it allowed Verstappen to close enough that even under the safety car, Lewis Hamilton would not have been able to pit and come out ahead of Verstappen. And a lot of that you can attribute to Sergio Perez putting Hamilton, in hindsight obviously, in that position for Max to help win that championship. Although he really wasn't anywhere near Max. I mean, he won Baku in 2021, but that was because Max Verstappen had that tyre failure. It was red flag, and Lewis Hamilton decided to absolutely I think it was use his brake magic and completely go off and embarrassingly at the first corner. But there we go. I mean, Perez, fair play to you. So enter 2023, the Perez we know now. Now in 2022, it was like an average year. Yeah, he did win races. There was that thing at Monaco where he got pole and won, which upset Verstappen because Verstappen thought he'd basically in qualifying did a Michael Schumacher Rascas 2006 and basically park his car by spinning it. And that's how he got pole and won at Monaco. Go forward to Brazil, that Max Verstappen, maybe somewhat selfishly, you could argue, but if you honestly believe that at Monaco, you could also make an argument that he was quite cross. Whatever, he decided not to let Perez through and help him finish second in the 22 championship. Red Bull have never had a 1-2 in the drivers for the championship, and alas, that didn't happen either. And it has been quite the tensions now and again between the two. But I think this year, other than the beginning of the year, which we'll get into, unfortunately, Perez is now so far away. I mean, we have here, the year started off well, but we have the Australian Grand Prix where Sergio Perez in Q1 completely binned it in the gravel traps. But we do have the highs. We have had the highs, have we, of Mr. Perez? I mean, we've obviously got that Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. His two victories of this year, Baku and Saudi, have come on the back, unfortunately, of Max Verstappen not making errors, but having issues in qualifying, let's say. So you could make an argument that it was inherited victories, but he still had to go out and win. And really, really impressively in Saudi, Max Verstappen got up to P2 really, really quickly. But, and here's the big but, Sergio Perez absolutely nailed every lap, and Verstappen just could not get close enough. And we had Baku, and once again, when Verstappen was in a position to challenge Perez, he could not get close enough again. But then we had Miami, but we did have Miami, and that was kind of an outlier where Max Verstappen again towards the back of the grid. But despite starting so far away from Perez, he obliterated Perez. He won and completely destroyed Perez, I feel. And I think so do a lot of people. And I think it was around that point where something snapped, something happened in Perez's head. And it all started going Pete Tong wrong. Let's say it just wasn't very nice at all for Perez. And he felt that the car ended up going away from him. And the way, this is the development, when I say the car, the development of the car ended up going away from him, and he just really started to suffer. Like Monaco, he had that crash, which was really embarrassing. Then everyone saw the underfloor of the Red Bull as well, thanks to Mr. Crane, which was interesting and maybe good for the teams. It may be a reason for 2024 for everyone to close up. He ended up having that whoopsie-daisy in Hungary as well by crashing it. He ended up having basically almost T-boning Alex Albon down at Singapore. But to be fair but with Perez in Singapore, it wasn't particularly great for Max Verstappen either. And here in Japan, he ended up doing somewhat similar to one of the Hasses as well. Ended up getting a penalty. Now, and this here is the sticking point. Okay, and all of the issues that Perez has had over the last few races, when you look at the points in these last 3 races, okay? So, McLaren have come on song. We've had Oscar Piastri, we've had Lando Norris. They have scored 104 points in 3 races. Red Bull have scored 74. Ferrari on 70. Mercedes on 53, albeit that could have been a lot more. Come, for example, had that Qatar Grand Prix not happened, but if is F1 spelled backwards, as Murray Walker likes to remind us. Alpine 17, Aston Martin only 30, but McLaren on 104. And that's the thing, and that's the big problem with Perez that I kind of teased at the beginning of the video. The issue is that despite Verstappen's dominance, that's 30 points more than Red Bull, and if this was the first 3 races of the season and McLaren were going along and Perez could not get near Max Verstappen, Red Bull are not really in that Constructors' Championship, are they? Let's have a look at obviously both Perez there. Here he is. Here's his stats for this year so far, up to and including the Qatar Grand Prix. Here's stats for Verstappen. Obviously, Verstappen in the championship leading. He's got 17 starts, as good old Max. 14 wins, 10 poles. I think 16 podiums, 8 fastest laps. Best result was obviously first, qualifying's first, and 433 points in what many see as the best car. Now, when we look at Sergio Perez, two second of the championship, albeit Lewis Hamilton is not a million miles away. I think about 30 points away, maybe at the time of doing this video. He's had 17 starts, 2 wins, 2 poles. Only 8 half the podiums of Max as well. 2 fastest laps. Best result was obviously first, and he's qualified in pole. 1, I think, actual proper DNF. But he's on 224 points. I mean, Max Verstappen has almost doubled his points in what is considered, once again, the best car. Now, is it a case of, has Sergio Perez kind of done a Ricciardo at McLaren and he just cannot get on with this car? I think many would normally rate, before McLaren, prior to him going to McLaren, Ricciardo better than Sergio Perez. And it'll be interesting if Ricciardo does overtake his place, how he'd be now compared to Max. Because when he left, he was very close to Max. So I mean, a lot of people are going to find it absolutely fascinating. And that's the problem. And that's the big problem with Perez. It's just staring there at McLaren on 104, Red Bull on 74 in those last 3 races. I mean, what the devil are we going to do? And Perez has actually tried stuff. When we look at this story from PlanetF1.com, Red Bull has blocked Sergio Perez's plan to get the F1 23 challenge back on track. So Perez, Red Bull have rejected Perez's proposal to get his F1 23 challenge, title challenge, let's just say for second, back on track, because he wanted to revert to a pre-Spanish Grand Prix version of the RB19. And as we know, he enjoyed one of his best start to a season this year, winning 2 of the 4 opening races in Saudi and Azerbaijan. But his Red Bull seat has become under severe threat, pretty much because of his lack of whatever's going on at the moment. Now, he enjoyed a run of 5 consecutive rounds without a Q3 appearance, and that was between Monaco and Britain, Silverstone, but appeared to steady the ship. He got 4 podiums in 6 races, either side of the summer break. However, his tally of just 5 points in the last 3 races. 5 points. Singapore, Japan and Qatar, and that's where Max has won 2 out of the 3, has seen his place in the team for next year obviously come under increasing scrutiny. Now, with Perez claiming Red Bull's development has been swayed away from him and towards Max, who clinched his 3rd successive World Championship in Qatar, it's been suggested that the 33-year-old's attempt to close the gap would turn down to the team. Now, he's with Perez producing his best performances at the start of the season. He obviously asked to go back to a Barcelona spec for the RB19, but he obviously got told no. Now, Red Bull had introduced a new underbody at the Spanish Grand Prix. That was round number 7. And crucially, the second race of Perez's sequence of 5 races without a Q3 in the best car. At least in the hands of Verstappen. And as we know, Verstappen responded well to the upgrade, basically becoming more dominant than ever before. But Perez then fell into a vicious circle in the weeks after Barcelona, attempting to recapture this early season form. And he felt his mid-season crisis was over once he finished second behind Verstappen at Monza. But the last 3 races have revealed that this is very much not the case. So the problem with Perez, the only thing that might save him is if he is to win a race, I think, between now and the end of the season. Marco's basically come out. I don't know if it's here, but he's is it round here? No. Marco's basically come out and has suggested that if Perez does not win, not win within the next 2 races, but they've got 2 races to decide. There's also rumours that he's going to announce his retirement at the Mexican Grand Prix, which everyone vehemently denies, which means there's a chance of it being true. But that's Formula One. So what do you guys think? We're probably going to end up doing a piece on Sergio Perez and who could potentially replace this poor guy. And we'll do another video. I mean, is it going to be Lawson? Is it going to be Ricciardo? Who else could it be? Even people are throwing in Vettel and Alonso. It's like a crazy silly season in October. But there we go. Anyway, I digress. This has been the Hot Lap. I wanted to say, if you made it to the end, you are an F1 champion. If you like, that's great. If you subscribe, even just as amazing. And if you comment, I will do my absolute best. I eventually do comment back on everything. Once again, thank you so much. Just listening to this and giving us a view is absolutely amazing. Listening to me waffle on. Thank you very much. We'll speak to you soon.